You're listening to Crackin' Mum Maths, where we try and crack that sweet spot of balancing the giant mental load of mum stuff with keeping a sliver of space for your finances. Bianca, hit us with the boring bits, please.
You are listening to Cracking Mum Maths. This podcast does not take into consideration your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Before acting on any information, you should consider the appropriateness of the information provided and the nature of the relevant financial product, having regard to your objectives, financial situation, and needs.
Bianca, we're here recording our first ep of our potty.
Can you believe it? It's finally happening.
I'm so glad that we've been able to carve out the time to do this because we're both so passionate about this topic, aren't we?
Absolutely, and we often talk at dinner parties and girls' drinks about our shared concerns for women, particularly mums, and their financial well-being.
Just a light topic to cover off on a night out, you know.
After a couple glasses of wine.
Exactly. So Bianca, we've been best friends since year 7, which is a very, very long time ago now. And we're like chalk and cheese, yin and yang, which actually works so well for us.
We are, and funnily enough, our two professions are actually quite useful together.
They are. And look, I'm going to humble brag here on your behalf. Bianca is a senior financial advisor in Melbourne, and she's a very quiet achiever, this one. Last year, she came runner-up at the FAAA Certified Financial Planner of the Year award, which is an incredible achievement, B.
Thank you. It was really nice to have a bit of recognition. And your industry, Nat, could not be more different as a TV producer and now media and content specialist.
Are the FAAAs like the Logies of your industry?
Possibly. Tim Campbell was the MC for the night, so does that make it really like Logie-esque?
Oh, I'd love to see the drama in the toilets at an FAAA event.
And on top of all of that, we're both working mums.
We are. We both have 2 kids each, so we get it. It's bloody hard trying to juggle everything. And you know what? Maybe your finances get delegated to a partner.
And that's fair, Nat. Sometimes we think it's easier to delegate things like our finances instead of making lunchboxes. But the reality is you need to be across your finances and play a role in making financial decisions for you and your family.
And our purpose is not to bamboozle you with a barrage of finance talk, is it?
No. And in fact, there's nothing really groundbreaking with what we're doing. We just want you guys to stop and have a think about your finances.
Exactly. Just think of us as your little reminder in between wiping food off the floor, childcare drop-offs and kids' parties, and sleep regressions.
When you look at some of the stats in the country, Nat, on female and homelessness, particularly in older women, it's quite heartbreaking.
It's devastated. And B, what about the cost of lives, honestly?
At the moment, it's really alarming how many Aussie families are feeling the pain across this rising cost of living crisis that we've got. We've got really expensive grocery bills, really high energy bills. Fuel seems to be going up all the time. And unfortunately, in the past year alone, more than 40% of Aussie households have struggled to afford to pay just the basics in the last few months.
God, it's shocking, isn't it?
It's really, really hard at the moment.
And we're all feeling it. And I guess as the underdogs in this scenario, which we are, because as females, we typically take time out of the workforce to have babies. Maybe we go back in a part-time capacity, or we take a demotion in order to run a household. We kind of have to work harder here.
Yeah, you're definitely right. But what we want to do is not work harder. We want to try and work smarter. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to walk you guys through some easy bite-sized steps to help you carve out a little bit of time to start thinking about the future you.
So tell me, B, why is it important to think about our future selves?
Look, it's really important that we have a good think about what we want our life to look like, because if we don't, we'll just keep flailing along. And before you know it, it's like weeks have gone by, years have gone by, and you haven't quite made any substantial decisions, and they could be financial or they may not be, with real clear purpose.
You're right, because time kind of flies by, and before you know it, you may have decided to take some time out of the workforce when you had children and, 6 years have gone past. And I truly appreciate why women make that decision. It's so hard being a working mum and running a household and it makes sense to exit and just work for the family. I guess our concern is, as females doing that and you're working for your family, it's unpaid work. So you need to protect yourself financially for the unexpected. It could be illness, it could be divorce, or it could even be death.
They're all scenarios that no one ever wants to think about as well. So we always put it on the back burner.
And that's the thing, be like, when everything's going well, it's easy to just cruise along and you don't need to think about it. So many women find themselves unable to get back into the workforce at a level that can generate enough income to sustain their current lifestyle, or they decide to stay out of the workforce and they end up with very little super later in life, which can result in financial hardship.
And it's not just their own lifestyle they're trying to subsidise when they go back in. It could be their family too. They've got kids now. These kids are used to living a standard of living. So you feel the pressure as a woman if your partner isn't around for whatever reason to try and live up to that. And unfortunately, time is money. So it's not too late to start now. It has to be something you need to start thinking about. Sit down, think about your current situation, understand your financial situation, especially if you haven't been the main driver in making a lot of those financial decisions of late.
Absolutely. And whatever your decision is totally fine. Whether you go back to work, whether you work part-time, whether you decide to stay at home and work for your family and run the household, it's just being informed about those decisions and making sure it does fit in with your lifestyle and where you see yourself in the future. And I guess just being aware and having a say in those family finances and those discussions to make sure that you cover yourself if anything went wrong, and to just have that information and know where your money is and know about your family financial situation.
Totally right, Nat. And this is why this podcast is so important to both of us. We want to empower women to understand their financial position. We want you to understand the steps that you need to take to duly plan for your family, but at the same time protect yourselves. And that's something that doesn't happen quite often right now. So there's no better time to start. Let's do it. Doesn't matter what stage you're at in life, let's start planning.
Wonderful. So how do we start, Bianca?
Well, it's funny you say that. This episode is actually not going to be talking about finances much at all. What we're going to talk about is life mapping. Have you heard of that one before, Nat?
No, I've done career mapping before, but I haven't done any life mapping.
I'm sure it's pretty similar, really. At the end of the day, the reason I suggest mapping is the first thing that we do is to steer away from making two really common mistakes that we see all the time in the business. The first is people making financial decisions based on emotion. So let's take the emotion out of it and use logic to drive our investment decisions.
I know 100% what you're talking about. It's like when you spend the summer down the coast and you're like, oh, I've got to have a beach house. And you just open the realestate.com app and you're looking at how much beach houses cost.
That's right. And then all of a sudden you've made the second mistake, and that's running out and buying that beach house when you don't really have a plan. So we're not going to talk about financial plans right now. We're talking about life plans. So let's start building our life plan.
I can definitely get around a life plan with me living in Byron with Chris Hemsworth doing ice baths. And
I'm pretty sure we call that a pipe dream. Not a plan.
All right. Seriously, though, this is great. So would you suggest, dare I say the word, vision board in a finance podcast, Bianca? Hello, Canva?
Okay. Or a spreadsheet.
See, there's that chalk and cheese, your spreadsheet versus Canva. I die.
There are a few ways to look at this, right? So we can start thinking about our 70-year-old selves and what we want retirement to look like. That's one way of starting.
All right. So like 70-year-old Nat does not want to be grinding a 9 to 5. I want to be able to, I don't know, go to Pilates or out for dinner, own my own home, and maybe go on like a family holiday once a year. Is that the kind of thinking?
Yeah, that's a good place to start. The other way you could do it, which might be more easier for people, is actually to start thinking about the next 5 or 10 years and what do you want the family plan or your life plan to look like over the more recent times.
Okay, so for instance, it'll be like, I don't know, keep paying your mortgage down or save for a home. Maybe you want to save for a reno or a new car or a big ticket item, or something as simple as we want to take the kids to Queensland every year. Is that the type of thing?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good idea to sit down and have a chat with your partner about this as well, so that you guys can align on what some of those goals will look like. This is why finance as mums is really tricky, because obviously when you're flying solo in your 20s, you've got no one else to think about other than yourself. And now you've got to start thinking about a plan for not just you, but your family.
Yeah, true. So you might also want to think about things like, I don't know, what school fees, even like what your dream career might look like.
It's exactly right, Nat. So let's jot it down in any form that works for you. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, well, because we're busy mums, and yes, I'm going to say busy mums. Mums are busy, 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 busy all the time, because in case you didn't realise, mums are busy. Remember when before you had kids when you thought you were busy?
Oh, and now.
It's just crazy. So I'd suggest actually starting by jotting this down in your notes on your phone, because you've always got your phone on you and it's easy and accessible.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. So make it pain-free, easy, and that way we'll continue to do it.
You might get to school pickup like 6 minutes early, and you can jot it down, or you're at swimming.
You could even run a relaxing bath nap. Pour a glass of wine.
Oh,
that might be helpful.
Yes.
Or if you're in the midst of breastfeeding, maybe, I guess you could do it while you're sitting on the couch.
Oh my God, true. Something to do while you're feeding that is not Instagram and Netflix, because like it just sucks your brain cells after a while.
Seriously, it was the worst.
So one thing I want to ask you, B, and I've kind of experienced this recently, and I was working with a professional coach, and she kept telling me I was thinking so small and I needed to think bigger. And honestly, I couldn't do it. I couldn't think big. And I reckon when you're in the thick of parenting little humans and you're just trying to get through the days, the weeks, literally one morning at a time, what's your advice if some of the mums out there are finding themselves in that slump?
Look, it's totally fine and it's totally understandable. So what you should probably do then is just think about the next 12 months. The next 12 to 18 months, let's not worry about the next 3, 10, 70-year-old me. Let's just stick to what our brain or our minds can cope with right now, which might just be the next 12 months.
That still steers you in the right direction anyway.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So you hear that term that time is your enemy. Well, in this case, it's probably your biggest help. So the earlier you start, obviously you invest, compounding interest, those long-term goals can be achieved a hell of a lot quicker if you start earlier. But we just can't make this painful, because unfortunately the problem is that most people make this a really difficult exercise and it's really hard to stick to, so they just don't do it.
Yeah, true. And I guess at the end of the day, our goals are made up of those little micro decisions that we make on a daily basis. So if you can make those decisions all leading to something, then you'll get there quicker in the long run.
That's exactly right, Nat. So step 1 right now is just to concentrate on documenting those personal and financial goals and aspirations that you have for yourself and for your family. We don't want to go deep into solution mode. That's just taking on too much right now. Remember, small, manageable bites. That's what we want to do, because realistically, finding an hour just to do that right now might be difficult for some people.
So Bianca, you mentioned solution mode. What is solution mode?
Solution mode is when people think that they're going to do an action. So it might be we're going to invest in shares, or it might be we're going to take the money in the bank right now and pop it down into our home loan to pay it off. They've gone straight into solution mode without thinking about, well, what are the goals that are out there in their life in the next 12 months that might, by doing what you just did, going into solution mode, might actually hinder those goals that you've got.
That's so interesting. Okay, so we don't need to go into the funds we need for this. We just need to have a bird's eye view of what we want our life to look like.
That's exactly it.
So Bianca, in order to do this, we need time. And this brings us to our favourite segment, and also my favourite time of the week, where we delegate or eliminate. So in order to be able to tackle our finances, we need to take something off that very big mental load and that to-do list. So Bianca, what are you going to delegate or eliminate this week?
Great question. Well, we're going back to all of the after-school activities that my boys engage in, which sounds fun at the time when you're enrolling them until you realize the logistics of dropping them off and picking them up. So I have decided that this week I am delegating 1, maybe 2 of those activities to my husband, and it's going to be his sole responsibility to get them there on time, sit through the hour soccer training, and come home again. And that'll give me, hopefully, an hour of my time back a week.
To do your life mapping.
To do my life mapping. There you go.
And will this include him having to pack all of the bags and the things for sport?
Look, that might be pushing my luck. Baby steps. Let's just start with dropping them off and picking them up after training. And maybe we can progress into packing bags before. And maybe emptying them after. That would be helpful too, wouldn't it?
I love this. Maybe we should turn this podcast into how to train your husband.
Oh, gosh. What are you planning on eliminating or delegating that while we're on this?
Well, look, I'm actually so pleased with myself. And it's only thanks to this segment that I decided to do this, but we need a new side fence. Our fence is like 100 years old. It's falling down. It's almost non-existent. And usually I would have a Pinterest board, a drawing, measurements, all fleshed out. And I'll say to my husband, this is what I want. This time around, I'm like, I don't care. You do whatever. This is your responsibility. I want no part in it. So this has panicked him, obviously.
Because he knows he's going to get it wrong. Let's face it.
But look, whatever happens, I can't say anything negative. I'm at capacity right now. I can't take anything else on. Fencegate could become a large part of this podcast as well.
Natalie. So we implore you all of our listeners, our lovely listeners, to have a think about your own lives and let's see what we could delegate or eliminate.
And it feels good just to let go.
Do less. That's what the kids all say.
Do less of the unimportant stuff and more of what matters long term. You know, like if it's not going to matter in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes on it. And as much as you want to be that mum and do so much of the useless stuff, and I'm so guilty of this, I see something on Instagram and I want to replicate it. I don't have time to do it. And you're not going to care about it in a year's time. So yes, do less.
Are you one of those ones that's cutting up your son's sandwiches into dinosaurs so that he eats it at school?
Oh, Bianca, I've cut food into so many different shapes so my kids will eat it. But now I'm at the point where it's like they will eat if they're hungry.
100%. Although we do love a good hack. I'm not going to say I don't like
We
a hack.
love time-saving hacks. So if you have a hack that is a time-saving hack, can you please send it in to us? And Bianca, we should do like a hack episode.
100%. That's a great idea. So just slide into our DMs, send us through a message, let us know what those hacks are.
I'm obsessed with watching on TikTok toddler travel hacks. None of them worked for me.
If you could see my face right now, honestly, that just sounds like the biggest time sucker of your day. Now.
Oh, it's a complete time sucker. It's not a saver at all. Now, Bianca, can you give us like a little cliffy or a sneak peek on what the next step is?
Next episode, we're going to take that plan, Nat, and we are going to look at what our family spends and determine if we have a surplus or a deficit, and we're going to go from there. That's when we're going to start going into solution mode.
Okay, great. Look, Bianca, thank you so much for helping me tackle one of my 2024 goals, and it's only Feb.
Well, you're welcome. And if anyone else has any other topics that they would like us to cover, or you've got any questions maybe from this podcast, or any questions you want us to cover in future podcasts, just head again to our socials, slide into our DMs, let us know. We'll be happy to take them into consideration.
Slide into our DMs. I never thought I'd hear those words come out of your mouth, Bianca, from a non-social media user.
Totally.
And Bianca, can I just say how impressed I am that we actually have a little person with us today while we're recording this podcast, and he's been so good.
I apologise if you can hear his little feet running up and down the hallway. It is my little son, Leo. But thank you all for listening. We can't wait to do this again next week.
We'll see you next week. Thanks.
Bye.